Today's our last class on this series of 6 classes of Zen Master Seung San's collection of talks called the Compass of Zen. So we're doing the second section on Zen Buddhism, and of course we're a school of Zen practice. So I want to go back to last class and again remind everyone of the basic insight that comes from Zen Buddhism and that creates the foundation for Zen Buddhism. To pass through this gate, do not attach to anything that arises in the mind, not depending on words, a special transmission outside the Sutras, pointing directly to mind. See your true nature become Buddha. This is really, in terms of explanation, the heart of where Zen practice is coming from. This understanding that our original nature is before thinking, before any kind of conceptual thought. Usually we try to discover who am I through various kinds of thinking, but we can't. Only when we see through the nature of thinking, then everybody can get an immediate understanding, immediate experience of who we are. Since it's who we are, you've never lost it, and you won't lose it. You just may never recognize it, which would be a shame. So the whole basis of Zen practice is to not attach to what arises in your mind. We often hear this phrase, and sometimes we use it, cut your thinking, cut your thinking. It's kind of like when you're driving a car. Zen Master Seung San used to say, our thinking mind is like a backseat driver. You're driving your car, you're going someplace, but this person in the back seat keeps telling you, turn left, no, turn right. Oh, don't go that way, go this way. That's our desire, anger, and ignorance mind. So sometimes, how do you deal with that? You let it talk on and you ignore it. Other times you have to turn around and say, shut up, I'm driving the car. So cut your thinking is that strong kind of movement. But the heart and root of it is not to attach to anything that appears. That ability is the sword that cuts. So don't worry about when you're sitting or chanting or bowing, thinking's appearing, don't attach to it. And that's not easy, because as soon as one thought appears, we follow it and divide it and make it our life. It becomes our life. But if we learn to pay attention, to be aware, then we can even begin over time to realize when a thought has appeared and not hold on to it, not let it go further. If you're practicing, you've already experienced that. Maybe in everyday life, even if you've never practiced, you've experienced that. Something comes in your head and you realize following that is not smart. But Zen practice just means to become more skillful at that. Then your thinking doesn't control you. And in fact, when it appears less, or it has less draw, less control of your attention, you can begin to see what's going on. I remember doing a 3-month retreat at Shinmun-sa Temple before we had Musang-sa. Is around 1988. And I had been a monk about 4 years and had been ended up in Paris. So I lived with lay people most of those first few years of being a Sunim. And I finally left that position and told Zen Master Seung San I wanted to go to Korea and do kyelches. I hadn't done a kyelche in about maybe 5 years. And so I did. And the retreat was great. It was in a temple that's 1,300 years old. I always like to say the toilet was 1,300 years old, although this town has now rebuilt the toilet, so it's not quite as interesting as it was. But it was a very small temple, and it was all international people. No coming, no going. 3 months, we all stayed in one building, small building together. It was quite intense. And after lunch, I would go every day. We had a break of about an hour and a half or 2 hours. I guess an hour and a half. I would go to this one small building, very small. It was maybe 3 yards, 3 meters long, and maybe not even 2 meters wide. And there was an altar there. It was considered the mountain hermit, and I think it was also the mountain god and a patriarch's hall, all together in this one small hall. And I would stand in front of the altar and chant for an hour. And so I was about a meter from the altar, and there was a big painting with many Buddhas and things on it. And I remember after 2 months, one day I noticed there's wax splattered all over the painting because sometimes the candle snuffer to put out the candle wasn't there, and people wouldn't blow out the candle. They'd go like this with their hand and try and make some wind. But if you do that, sometimes you'll hit the candle and then the wax flies out. And I thought, I've been doing this for an hour a day for 60 days, and it's the first time I noticed the wax is all over this painting. So don't be surprised if one day you look at your family and the same thing happens. You see something you never saw before, or you look at yourself either in a mirror or reflecting on yourself, and you see something you didn't see before. And that can terrify you or really upset you, but if you don't attach to it, it just makes you wider. Awareness itself brings about change. So as soon as we're aware of something we're thinking or feeling or holding on a deep level, it has less control over us and our lives, and then we can live more skillfully. Next topic that I said that I would talk about in last class, I said I would talk about this class is 2 very important things in Zen practice: meditation and wisdom. I think in Hinayana Buddhism they would call it concentration and insight. Maybe there's slight difference in the way you get there or the taste and feeling. But of course, in all Buddhist practice, the ultimate aim is the same: realize our true nature and become wise and compassionate and peaceful and free, and be devoted to living a life that benefits everyone. So in Zen, we call it meditation or Samadhi, and wisdom or Prajna. What is meditation? Well, if you've been involved with our school at all, you know it's not just sitting. Meditation means a not moving mind. Not moving mind means when you're doing something, just do it. So I already talked about that, an example of washing dishes. You're washing dishes and you're thinking something else. So you're not just washing dishes. When we drive the car, often we're thinking something else. If we have kids, we might be thinking, are they studying or playing video games? We might be thinking about our bank account, somebody that said something that bothered us, anything. But we're not just doing what we're doing. Sometimes we do just do what we're doing because it's our natural, it's possible, it's our natural way. But we create very strong habits of doing one thing and often thinking about something else. So practice means when you notice that, return your attention to what you're doing right now. And if we do it again, just like an athlete training, just like a musician training themselves, you will get more skillful at doing that. Then more often your body, your mind, and the situation are one. Then naturally you're in harmony with the universe that time. You don't need to think about it. Actually, if you're even thinking like, well, hey, I'm really doing it now, I become one, it's already gone, or it's too late at least. But just practice it, do it. Name is meditation. So when you're just driving meditation. When you're just playing tennis meditation. When you're just chanting, it's chanting meditation. When you're just washing dishes meditation. When you're with your family, 100% family mind, not thinking about other things, that's a family meditation. So we do these simple practices, bowing, sitting, chanting, and where we can become very aware of when we're not just doing it. And that helps us be aware of it in our everyday life and be able to gather our attention and put it right here, right now. So the only way to do that is practice. You know? Do formal practice every day and do your daily life every day and practice returning your attention to just now. There's a great violinist, I forget, I have to look up which one it is, but he once said, if I don't practice for a day, I can tell the difference. If I don't practice for 2 days, my critics can tell the difference. They can hear the difference. If I don't practice for 3 days, everybody can hear the difference. So that's why we call this practice. It's a path, it's a journey, it's an effort. And if you develop a practice which you can take anywhere in any situation, then you're never unemployed. You always have a direction to take this present moment in, or to take in this present moment. Even when you're sick, Zen Master Sun San often said, sick time only sick. That's a sick practice, correct. So we can take it, we can bring each moment into practice. If you're not sure what's happening, just ask yourself, what am I doing right now? I remember, a long time ago, I think I still was a lay person. I was visiting my parents and sitting in the kitchen with them, and they were doing something, maybe cleaning up right there. And I was just sitting there, and I remember, I must have been about 30, thinking to myself, I have no relationship with these people. I have no relationship with my parents. And then I thought, well, that's a ridiculous thought. I mean, if Buddhism's right, we're always in relationship with everything in the whole universe. So then I thought to myself, what's my relationship with my parents? And then it became very clear how I felt that very moment. I think it was anxious and alienated. I remember thinking that. And suddenly I laughed to myself, I have a relationship with them, anxious and alienated, And it made me laugh, and I felt the fullness of being connected just by recognizing how I felt when I was with them. It really wasn't anxious or alienated the moment I recognized it. So, if you're not sure what's going on in any kind of situation, ask yourself, what am I doing right now? Standing here at the kitchen sink, complaining about my life. Is that a way you want to spend your time? That name is meditation, okay? Wisdom, what is wisdom? Wisdom is not some kind of knowledge that you carry around in your brain. I remember taking a class in 8th grade, our science course, and I had studied, I forget what the course, the subject was, but I do remember one thing. There was a question on the test, and it said, a flame is a blank. And I just looked at it, and suddenly, like a photograph, I remembered a page from our textbook. And on the page, it said, a flame is a burning gas. So, boop, So that's kind of a knowledge that you can carry around, I mean, it came up in a very timely way, but wisdom is a little different. Although there's an aspect to wisdom that. Wisdom is when you become one in a situation and you naturally function in what we call correct situation, correct function, correct relationship. Oh, these words are just dead compared to the experience of doing it. But it's like this. If this were a tree, the wind blows, the tree moves. Well, it's a tree's wisdom. It's not like holding it in its idea. It's its ability to function correctly with the wind. And we can do that with everything in our life if we recognize our hindrances, what covers, so to speak, our true nature, our opinions, our attachments. When we recognize that and begin to let them go, that stuff happens by itself in our relationship, just like the tree. The tree doesn't, it didn't go to tree school, and in tree school, the older tree said, when the wind blows, you got to go like this, okay? So do it, don't be a jerk. Don't hold your own opinion. Wind blows, go like that. Go with the wind. If it's blowing this way, go this way. I know you don't want to go that way, but that's your problem. You want this. You want that, but the wind's blowing this way. It didn't have to go to school. Human beings are like the only ones that have to go to school, and it's not clear whether school helps us or not. So the words are keep correct situation, correct function, correct relationship. But how do we do that? I noticed with some of Zen Master Seung San's Korean students who became monks, this was a difficult teaching phrase for them. And I think it's because they grew up, Korean people grew up, already it's changing, but grew up in a Confucian culture, which told you from outside, this is what you're supposed to do in this situation, this is what you do in this situation, this is what you do in that situation. So it seems like correct situation, correct function, correct relationship comes from an outside idea. Actually, most religions do that. Fortunately, I think my religion tried to do that, but it didn't work. So, correct situation function, it's not inside or outside. So if we want to get that, only go straight, don't know, okay? So how do we attain that? How do we get wisdom? How does our wisdom grow? 3 things: together action with others, a big question. Instead of just running around all the time, emoting and coming up with our opinions about everything, have a question, And very helpful in Zen teaching, in our school at least, is correct Kongan practicing. So I'll talk about that in a few minutes. I remember in America, Zen Master Seung San often used the phrase together action. And it's really remarkable to see Asian people who, it comes much more naturally because of the upbringing. Of course, everybody has their own, and every culture has its own problems and issues. But for example, once I was invited to a middle school to give a talk about meditation, and they told me don't give too much religious stuff, but I think because I was Western, even though I was a Buddhist monk, and the teachers who asked me to come, maybe they trusted me, I came. And the class was middle school, and they were sitting on this kind of rising area, like a movie theater. So I could see every row of kids very clearly. And I decided I would just teach then Tunjun Hohop, breathing from your lower belly, or what we call Sun Yu, as a way to kind of calm yourself when you're stressed and bring your attention back to the present moment and to feel better. Just to feel better, not to feel so nervous and stressed out and worried. And I remember I said, okay, everybody put down their books, and I could hear like, and then the scary part was I said, everybody sit up straight, and everybody sat up straight. And I thought, boy, if somebody had said that in my junior high, half the kids would have gone like this. Now they would have done the opposite. Or they would have leaned to one side. Some kids would sit up straight, but like the whole group did. It's almost scary, But on the other hand, now that we have the virus, everybody in Korea wears a mask. And all us great individualist Americans are going around getting each other sick because we're free. So, you can see every culture has its advantages and disadvantages. Actually, if you spend time in other cultures, you can learn some good stuff from everybody, and you can see some of the hindrances from where you came from. And then it makes you more free, and it gives you more tools to deal with what appears in life, and it makes life more interesting. Together action is very important because we bang into each other. And that gives us the opportunity, if we have a question, to wonder about those experiences rather than just holding our opinion about it. And a feeling often is an opinion mixed with your body. Many times for example, I used to notice when I give private interviews that about 20, 30 years ago, women often, when they were angry, they'd start crying. But nowadays, most of the women I know, when they get angry, they tell you right away what they're angry about. So there's been this a change, it's like we're all trained into something, and many women were trained into, not express this, and men were trained into not express that. And you don't blame society, just take credit for what you swallowed, and then you can change it. You can change yourself. If you blame something, you are always running into opposites, and it will always create problems. It's simply not skillful. So when you notice yourself blaming, right away turn that around. Be very aware. As a psychiatrist that I trained with when I worked in a psychiatric hospital would say, you may not know exactly what's going on, but a red flag should go up in the back of your mind, like, pay attention. What am I doing right now? So when you notice blame mind appear, and everybody has it, be aware of that and really question it. And be very careful about thinking, I'm right. What I have found, and it may not be valid for you, but what I have found is when I've had blaming mind, I wasn't keeping my correct situation function relationship. It doesn't mean I have to follow some outside idea of what I should do. The correct situation function relationship, sometimes it's kind of a mystery that appears when you don't know. And then it's wonderful when it appears and you kind of know it's right and you don't think about it a lot. You don't need to. So together action is helps us get wisdom. Because if we stay by ourselves, often our karma just becomes stronger. We can't see it. We may see some things, but some things we just don't see. So our teacher, Sunim, Zen Master Sung San, never wanted anybody to do a retreat longer than 100 days. He felt if a person stays alone, at least in this modern world, stays alone too long, doesn't matter if they're strong or weak, the karma that they don't see only becomes stronger. So together action is very important. Sometimes practice with others. Sometimes practice on your own, like many of you do at home. And family life itself is together action. Working life is together action. Going outside your house and running into the public is together action. Living with the air, the water, the nature, the animals and other creatures is together action. And if we keep a question, and if we have a big direction, which I'll also talk about shortly, then we will learn a lot all the time. And then even when you get old, you can still be learning. I mean, I'm not that old, but I think I enjoy learning even more than before. And I talked to my uncle. Many of you are family people, and I feel fine talking about my limited experiences with family since I haven't lived with them in 52 years. But I always would visit. I called my uncle. He's in, isolation, 93 years old, in some group old age home, had to stay in his own little apartment in that home for like 3 months. And they would bring food every day a few times. And I said, Uncle Bob, how you doing? Are you depressed? Are you lonely? He said, no, I got plenty to do. I watch concerts on my big computer screen, and I read a book, and I clean up a little bit. And this guy's 93, and he's still interested in stuff. That we can be like that. We just have to pay attention and have questions. Have a mind that isn't so attached to our opinions or even our feelings. Feelings are a sign pointing to what's going on. And if you understand yourself, the more you understand yourself, the more your feeling is giving you information about the situation. Doesn't mean you're right, but you get information about the situation. And if you have that, you can understand. Your understanding's wider. And it's like your arms can embrace others. Your arms can embrace and take care of other people's opinions. Because usually if you have a strong opinion and somebody and you fight with somebody, their opinion gets stronger. Or they give in and they hate you for it. Once in a while, but if you connect, people's minds can change. Your mind can change. Their mind can change. You have to connect. First connect. Then, you can talk about things. So if you can't connect, then it's just a war of opposite thinking, and it can produce very bad results. So in America, we used to say, the teaching that we hate the most that we got from Zen Master Sung San is together action. But it is extremely valuable. And, Korean, I imagine Chinese too, that starts right in the family. I think, at least, I don't know, but it seems like, I don't know whether to say it's an American family or my family. I think when I was born, my idea was to leave home immediately. But I couldn't walk and I needed somebody to feed me, so I stayed for a few more years. Kwanzaa Bosa. Together action, it's a path to wisdom, if you can survive it. Big question. That means a question about anything, you know. Like, what the hell am I talking about, you know? That's a question. And correct Kongan practice. So if you've been practicing with us, you've probably had Kongan interviews. If you have just been sort of on the edges of the practice, then probably not. But if you've read about Zen Buddhism, you know that there's something called Kongans, which are simply situations from which a teacher uses a situation to ask a question. And all of these point to something that human beings have a problem with. So all the Kongans are pointing to some aspect of human life or consciousness or mind or hindrance that causes us to suffer when it appears. And that's a very wide range, so there's many Kongans. Some Kongans can help you learn to deal with what to do when somebody attacks you. Some are about opposites thinking. Some are about attaching to metaphysical or conceptual thinking. Some are about everyday life. Some are about how to handle situations when you make a mistake. How to handle situations when you've made somebody's angry at you. Kongan's about, can you, in a very natural, simple way, perceive cause and effect? Some Kongans relate to love. What is love? Everybody wants love, or they don't want to go near anybody and have something called love, which can look pretty bad sometimes. What is love? What really is love? So all these Kongans, the original basic Kongans, are a collection of 1,700 stories from the tradition of Buddhist teaching that was put together in about 1000 AD by a Chinese monk. And so there's 1,700 stories, and masters will use those stories and create questions or problems for their current student. And then, of course, many teachers will use everyday life situations and make up their own Kongans. Actually, if you begin to realize what this is, you'll see your whole life is a Kongan. Everything you run into is a Kongan. It's like asking you, what are you going to do now? You know, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? What am I going to say now? That's a Kongan. So why do we do Kongan practice? Where we actually go in and see a teacher, maybe talk about our practice, and then often they will ask us some question. They may use some old story. It may come from any place, who knows. But why do we use Kongan practice in Zen? Well, of course, the original Kongan is Buddha's big question, what am I? And probably for at least a few moments in your life, often when you were 8, 9, or 10 years old, that Kongan, that question appeared to you. Like, you know, what am I? What is this? What's going on here? You know, like, what is life? That's the original Kongan, okay? And then the masters use that particularly. The old style was, it's not even the original style, but the style that developed particularly in the 1200s in Song Sung Dynasty, China, which came to Korea as Kanwasan, which is the main Zen teaching in Korean Buddhism now. That style was to give a student a question based on one of these ancient stories, often where a Zen master responded in a very interesting way, and that becomes the object of your meditation. You focus on that, and if you're able to, or if your life is simple enough, you try to maintain that question and the don't know that arises when you face it as long as you can. And then they say one moment, suddenly, boom, you get enlightened. So the two ways that they would use, that often kongans are used in Kanwasan, is to help you get enlightenment or for a Zen master to check your enlightenment. But we use it differently. Sungsan Sunim felt for the modern world, there's a much better way of using kongans. The first purpose is to help us keep the correct direction of practice, which is don't know. So somebody asks you a question and you don't know, you can't answer it, or you answer and the teacher says no, then you realize you don't know. That mind is the correct practice. Then don't know is sitting, don't know is chanting, don't know goes home, don't know does the laundry, don't know talks with their family. You are don't know. And you don't have to keep thinking those words, but the stronger you get that sense inside, the more your life itself becomes a spiritual and Zen practice. So, and what happens is, everybody has a different reaction to not knowing or not being able to answer a question. Some people immediately talk to themselves, I'm stupid, I can't ever do these things, or they get jealous, or they want to be like somebody else, or they, my favorite, of course, is when they get angry, and then they get angry at themselves, but even more, they get angry at the teacher, then they get angry at the school, then they think the whole thing's stupid, and you can go through anything, but if you're paying attention, you'll start to see your way of reacting. And it's probably not so different than the way you react to many things in life when you can't accomplish or get what you want. So you get to know yourself in a very unpleasant, deep way. But if you do, and keep looking at it, you'll realize, well, the truth is, I don't know, It's just don't know. It doesn't matter whether I'm angry or sad, whether I'm dumping on myself or whether I'm criticizing others. Underneath all of these reactions, don't know. That's all, and that has no judgment to it. In fact, in our school, that's the path. Only go straight, don't know. So I like to say that in university, if you don't know, you fail. But in Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, if you go straight don't know, you get enlightenment. So don't carry over your approach to a practice that you developed growing up in school. Unless what you developed is just a really good try mind. But most of us have many strong opinions, but you can experience it. And like anything, it takes time. If you're willing to keep trying, then you can learn about yourself. And then once in a while, you're very surprised when a correct answer comes out and you had you weren't thinking about it. And then it's like, well, where did that come from? Good point. So first purpose and value of Kongan practicing is it helps us return to correct direction. Many people practice Buddhism because they want to be more peaceful. That's not bad, but that's not the point. And ultimately, you're going to have problems. But the correct direction and purpose is realize my true nature and help others. How realize my true nature? Only go straight, don't know. So this Kongan practice helps us return to this don't know. Okay? Somebody is struggling making themselves keep the schedule. Somebody can keep the schedule really strong and they're very proud. But you can't answer, both can't answer a certain question. They don't know. If they can just, okay, don't know, they're already going the right way, no matter what their outside abilities are. So, first point, value of Kongan practice is helps us keep the correct direction, return to don't know. And I tell people, learn to be comfortable with not knowing, because, well, that's the correct way, that's the true way, but also when you're dying, you may not know where you're going. And if you can be comfortable with that, it'll be a lot easier. Even if you think you're going someplace like heaven, when you're dying, you'll find out how much do you really believe that. And then it's too late. Anyway, well then, just realize you don't know, and let's see. Second purpose of Kongan practice is it helps our wisdom grow up. Just like being out in the, going into the world and having experiences, if we have a question, if we reflect back on ourselves, everybody's experienced this, you learn and you can become wider and you feel you have a little more confidence than you did before. And all of us have limitations in that. That's why we practice. That's why Buddha practiced, you know. He had a big question, desire to help everybody, and he realized he had some limitations, which was, you know, he's very attached to his body, and he doesn't understand, am I going to just keep repeating this? Which was the idea in Hinduism. You know, you're just going to keep repeating over and over and again. Sometimes you're the king, sometimes you're the peasant, sometimes you're in the car, sometimes you're homeless on the street. It's just repeat forever. So that was the idea that was current in their society, and he got this big question about that. So, correct direction, don't know, and our wisdom can grow up. Rather than waiting for you to learn how to deal with being attacked from your family and your job, or even walking through the subway in Seoul, you can come in and see a teacher and they'll just attack you right away. And then you get to practice, how do I handle an attack wisely? And I have to say, Kongan practice has really helped me learn to deal with my family in a much better way, and even to begin to have fun doing it. So attack is just one kind, but our hindrances can be overcome through practice and through Kongan practice. And sometimes, if you've been practicing a while, it has no meaning for you. I remember when I had been a monk about a year, I suddenly was the abbot of a Zen center, and the only training I had as a monastic was with Sunim. Most monastics spend 4 years in a special training program with other nuns or other monks and so forth. And of course, I had lived in a Zen center already by then 7 years and been doing together action with people a lot. But suddenly, during the time I was in Paris, Kongan practice just had no meaning for me. And I realized it's because my everyday life was a constant Kongan. How do I deal with living with, 17 lay people, going out in the streets in Paris and having everybody look at me all the time? Because nowadays, if you're a male and you have a shaved head, nobody cares. I think for nuns in the West, it's much different. But for men, it doesn't make any difference at all. But, you wear these clothes and you're out in the society. In Korea, almost anybody who sees you, okay, that guy's a Sunim. If they're Buddhist, they're nice to you, they ignore you, or whatever. But in the West, maybe slowly more and more people understand Buddhist Sunims, but you run into anything. I didn't mind it because I found it really tested how comfortable I was with myself, you know. But I know a lot of Sunims have a real hard time with it because you get looked at and sometimes people aren't nice, and it's a kongan. Yeah. So don't feel bad if you're at some place in your practice where you just don't find that kongans touch you much. Not that you're not answering them, that's not it, but they just don't touch you much. It could be that the real kongans that you need to pay attention to are right there in your life. It's not a problem of the practice of the teaching. It's just where are we at that time. And that's something also you can talk over with the teacher.